Chapter 7, The Origin of Species. In 1928, Ernest Mayr, a young German zoologist and recent graduate, embarked on a successful one-man expedition, bringing back many new specimens that launched his career as an evolutionary biologist. Mayr wrote many books, including Animal Species and Evolution, in which he talked about how natives of New Guinea and scientists were independently able to recognize 136 different types of local birds. He believed that this concordance between two different cultural groups with different backgrounds should convince us that discontinuities of nature are not arbitrary, but objective fact. When we look at plants or animals, it is easy for us to categorize them into specific groups. Take cats, for example. Although there are many different types of cats, they do not blur into one big group. We can tell the difference between a tiger and a lion, and then we cluster like organisms together. We see clusters in all organisms that reproduce sexually. These clusters are known as species, and how these groups arise is a problem of speciation or the origin of species. How can we recognize the species? The morphological species concept suggests that we recognize species as a group of individuals that resemble one another more than they resemble members of other groups. For example, we know that peacocks are birds that have very long tail feathers, that have eye-line markings, and can be erected and expanded and displayed like a fan. This is similar to how Linnaeus first classified species in 1735. However, there's a problem with this. As we learned with sexual dimorphism, males and females of the same species can look very different. This is also a problem with variation within an interbreeding group. A big example of this are humans. Although many of us look different and have different eye color, different hair color, and different skin tones, humans can mate and produce fertile offspring. And what is true for humans is true for plants and animals. So the morphological species concept doesn't always hold true. In 1942, Ernest Mayr proposed a definition of species using reproductive criteria for species status. He defined species as a group of interbreeding natural populations that are reproductively isolated from other such groups. Reproductively isolated meaning that members of a different species have traits that prevent them from successfully interbreeding. This is also known as the biological species concept, and this definition has become the gold standard for evolutionary biology. So what keeps different species from mating with each other? Well, there are many different types of reproductive barriers. For example, species may not interbreed simply because their mating season or flowering seasons don't overlap. Also, many animal species have different pheromones and don't find each other sexually attractive. Species can also be isolated by preferring different habitats and simply don't encounter each other. However, isolating barriers can also act after mating. If two different species mate and a fetus is formed, it may die before birth, or even if the hybrid is to survive, it may be sterile. So, if different species cannot reproduce, how do new species evolve?